Marcus Chen adjusted his silk tie one last time before stepping through the brass doors of the Golden Dragon Casino. The familiar scent of expensive cigars and desperate hope filled his nostrils as he surveyed the opulent gambling hall. Crystal chandeliers cast dancing, shadows across green felt tables where fortunes changed hands with each roll of the dice. 2 years had passed since Marcus had escaped Victor Kozlov's underground casino with his life barely intact. The Russian crime lord had sworn vengeance after Marcus had exposed his rigged games and cost him millions. Now Marcus found himself in Las Vegas, working as a legitimate gambling consultant, helping casinos identify cheaters and improve their security systems. The Golden Dragon was different from Victor's seedy establishment. This was high-end luxury, where oil executives and tech billionaires came to lose their pocket change. The owner, Chen Wei, was Marcus's distant cousin who had given him a second chance after the disaster in Moscow. "Mr. Chen, we have a situation," whispered Linda, the floor manager appearing at his elbow. Her usually composed demeanor showed cracks of concern. "Table 7. The gentleman in the gray suit has been winning consistently for 3 hours straight. Blackjack, poker, roulette. Everything he touches turns to gold." Marcus nodded, his trained eye immediately locating the player. The man appeared to be in his 40s, well-dressed but not flashy. His movements were calculated, his betting patterns almost mathematical in their precision. Most tellingly, he showed no emotion whether winning or losing smaller hands, suggesting a level of control that came from years of professional gambling. "How much is he up?" Marcus asked, watching as the stranger doubled down on a blackjack hand. 400,000 and climbing. Chen Wei wants him watched closely. Marcus studied the player's technique. The man's fingers moved with surgical precision, never hesitating, never second-guessing. This wasn't luck or even skill in the traditional sense. This was something else entirely. As if sensing the scrutiny, the stranger looked up from his cards and met Marcus's gaze across the crowded casino floor. A chill ran down Marcus's spine as he recognized something familiar in those cold, calculating eyes. The man smiled slightly and returned his attention to the game. "Get me his registration information," Marcus instructed Linda. "Credit card, ID, everything we have on file." 20 minutes later, Linda returned with a folder. "Alexander Petrov, Russian businessman. Clean credit, no flags in our system. He's staying in the penthouse suite at the Bellagio." The surname made Marcus's blood run cold. Petrov was Victor Kozlov's right-hand man, the enforcer who had once broken a gambler's fingers for welching on a $5,000 debt. But Alexander was supposed to be dead, killed in a car bombing in St. Petersburg 18 months ago. Marcus watched as Alexander placed a massive bet on red at the roulette table. The wheel spun, the ball danced, and landed perfectly on red 32. The crowd erupted in cheers, but Alexander simply collected his chips with the same emotionless expression he had maintained all evening. "Sir, should we do something?" Linda asked nervously. Before Marcus could respond, his phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. "The student has become the teacher. Meet me in the VIP lounge in 10 minutes. Come alone. AP." Marcus felt his palms grow sweaty. Alexander wasn't just gambling. He was sending a message. Every win was calculated not just to make money, but to draw attention, to force this confrontation. The VIP lounge was a sanctuary of leather and mahogany, separated from the main casino floor by soundproof glass. Marcus found Alexander waiting with 2 glasses of expensive scotch and a knowing smile. "Marcus Chen, the famous casino consultant," Alexander said in accented English, gesturing to the empty chair across from him. "Please sit. We have much to discuss." "I thought you were dead," Marcus replied, remaining standing. "Reports of my death were greatly exaggerated. Victor needed the world to believe I was gone while I handled some delicate business." Alexander took a sip of scotch. "But enough about me. Let's talk about you and the rather substantial debt you still owe." "I don't owe Victor anything. We settled our business in Moscow." Alexander laughed, a sound devoid of humor. "Settled? My friend, you cost Victor $20 million and humiliated him in front of his associates. Did you really think a quick escape would erase that debt?" Marcus finally sat down, his mind racing through possible escape routes and defensive strategies. "What do you want?" "Victor is hosting a private tournament next month. Very exclusive, very high stakes. The buy-in is $5 million. Winner takes all. He wants you there. I don't have $5 million. This beautiful casino where you work, it's worth approximately 50 million, yes? Your cousin Chen Wei has built something impressive here. Alexander's threat was subtle but unmistakable. Marcus felt the walls closing in around him. You're threatening my family. I'm offering you an opportunity to settle your debt honorably. Win the tournament and Victor will consider your account balanced. Refuse to participate or lose? Alexander shrugged eloquently. Well, let's just say Victor has a long memory and longer reach. The Russian stood up, straightening his jacket. You have 72 hours to decide. I'll be in touch with the details. He paused at the door. Oh, and Marcus? Don't even think about running again. Victor has learned from his previous mistake. This time there will be nowhere to hide. After Alexander left, Marcus sat alone in the VIP lounge, staring at the untouched glass of scotch. The golden liquid reflected the room's ambient lighting, creating patterns that reminded him of the roulette wheel's hypnotic spin. He pulled out his phone and dialed Chen Wei's private number. Cousin, we need to talk tonight. What's wrong? You sound terrible. Marcus watched through the glass as Alexander cashed out his chips at the main counter, his winnings filling 2 large briefcases. The message was clear. Victor's reach extended everywhere, even into legitimate establishments like the Golden Dragon. My past just walked through our front door, Marcus said quietly. And it's not finished with me yet. As Alexander disappeared into the Las Vegas night, Marcus realized that his quiet life as a casino consultant was over. The deadly game he thought he had escaped in Moscow was about to begin again, with stakes higher than ever before. The war between him and Viktor Kozlov was far from over. It was just beginning. Chen Wei's private office overlooked the Las Vegas Strip from the 40th floor of the Golden Dragon Tower. The city's neon glow painted rainbow patterns across the mahogany desk where Marcus sat, explaining the impossible situation that had just walked into their lives. $5 million, Chen Wei repeated slowly, pouring himself a generous glass of green tea. His weathered hands showed the calluses of a man who had built his empire from nothing, starting with a single convenience store in Chinatown 30 years ago. This Russian wants $5 million for you to enter a tournament that might get you killed. Marcus nodded grimly. Victor doesn't just want the money. He wants revenge, and he wants it served in the most humiliating way possible, a public defeat followed by whatever punishment his twisted mind has planned. Chen Wei walked to the floor-to-ceiling windows, his reflection ghost-like against the city lights below. Tell me about this tournament. What makes it different from regular high-stakes gambling? Victor runs these events maybe once a year. They're invitation only, held in international waters to avoid legal complications. 24 players maximum, winner takes everything. But it's not just about the gambling. Marcus paused, remembering stories he had heard during his time in Moscow's underground scene. Victor likes to add psychological pressure. Players aren't just risking money. They're risking their lives, their families, their entire futures. What do you mean? Marcus stood up and joined his cousin at the window. Below them, tourists wandered the strip, blissfully unaware of the predators that hunted in the shadows above their world. Each player must put up collateral beyond the buy-in, something Victor can use to destroy them completely if they lose. For some, it's business secrets that would ruin their companies. For others, it's evidence of crimes that would send them to prison. Victor collects insurance policies written in blood and fear. Chen Wei turned away from the window, his expression thoughtful. And if you refuse to play? Then Victor will systematically destroy everything and everyone I care about, starting with the Golden Dragon and you. Marcus met his cousin's eyes. I won't let that happen. I'll find another way to get the money and face Victor on my own. No. Chen Wei's voice carried the authority of a man accustomed to making difficult decisions. We face this together. The Golden Dragon will provide the buy-in. Marcus shook his head vigorously. Absolutely not. This is my problem, not yours. Family is never just one person's problem. Chen Wei returned to his desk and opened a secure laptop. Besides, I have my own reasons for wanting Viktor Kozlov removed from the equation permanently. The laptop screen filled with financial documents and surveillance photos. Marcus recognized several faces from his time in Moscow's underground gambling scene, but others were new to him. For the past 6 months, Victor has been systematically targeting Chinese-American businesses on the West Coast, Chen Wei explained. Protection rackets, money laundering schemes, forced partnerships, He's building a power base for expansion into legitimate American markets. Marcus studied the documents with growing alarm. Victor's operation was far more sophisticated than he had realized. The Russian wasn't just a casino owner anymore. He was becoming a genuine threat to established organized crime territories. The Golden Dragon is on his list, Chen Wei continued. Whether you participate in his tournament or not, he'll eventually come for us. At least this way we choose the battlefield. A soft knock interrupted their conversation. Linda entered with a concerned expression and a manila envelope. Mr. Chen, this was delivered to the front desk 10 minutes ago. The courier said it was urgent and left immediately. Marcus recognized Alexander's handwriting on the envelope. Inside, they found a single photograph and a note written on expensive stationery. The photograph showed Marcus's younger sister, Sarah, walking out of her medical residency program in San Francisco. She was laughing at something her companion had said, completely unaware that she was being watched and photographed. The note was brief but chilling. The tournament begins in 6 days aboard the yacht Serena, in international waters off the California coast. Departure from Marina del Rey at midnight. Bring the buy-in in untraceable cryptocurrency. Your sister has such a promising medical career. It would be unfortunate if anything happened to interrupt her studies. VK. Marcus crumpled the note, his hands shaking with rage. He's watching Sarah. That bastard is watching my sister. Chen Wei studied the photograph carefully. This was taken yesterday afternoon. The timestamp shows 3:47 p.m. Pacific. Victor's people are already in position. The room fell silent except for the distant hum of the casino floor 40 stories below. Marcus felt the weight of impossible choices pressing down on him. Every option seemed to lead to disaster for someone he cared about. There's something else, Linda said quietly. The man who delivered this envelope? Our security cameras caught his face. He's been in the casino 3 times this week, always alone, always observing but never gambling. I think they've been watching us too. Chen Wei opened another file on his laptop, revealing detailed financial records. I've been preparing for something like this since we opened 5 years ago. The Golden Dragon has diversified investments, offshore accounts, and liquid assets worth approximately $75 million. $5 million is manageable, but more importantly, I have resources Victor doesn't know about. Marcus looked at his cousin with new respect. What kind of resources? The kind that come from 30 years of building legitimate businesses in a city founded by people who understood the value of mutual protection. Chen Wei's smile was thin but determined. Victor made a mistake when he decided to threaten Chinese-American businesses. We have our own networks, our own ways of handling problems. The phone on Chen Wei's desk rang with a sharp, urgent tone. He answered it immediately. Wei here. What? When? Are you certain? Yes, double the security immediately. He hung up and turned to Marcus with a grim expression. That was building security. They've detected electronic surveillance equipment planted in 3 different locations throughout the casino. Professional-grade military specifications. Marcus felt his world spinning out of control. Victor wasn't just threatening him. He was conducting a full-scale intelligence operation against the Golden Dragon. The Russian was studying their security, their operations, their weaknesses. He's not planning to wait for the tournament, Marcus realized aloud. Victor's planning multiple scenarios. If I refuse to play, he'll have all the information he needs to attack us here. Chen Wei nodded grimly. Then we give him what he expects while preparing for what he doesn't anticipate. What do you mean? You'll enter his tournament as demanded, but you won't be going alone and you won't be going unprepared. Chen Wei closed the laptop and walked to a wall safe, hidden behind a traditional Chinese painting. Victor thinks he's dealing with a desperate gambling consultant and his legitimate businessman cousin. He has no idea what we're really capable of. From the safe, Chen Wei withdrew a satellite phone and a small leather journal filled with handwritten notes in multiple languages. Make the call, he told Marcus. Accept Victor's invitation. Tell him you'll be there with the buy-in as demanded. Marcus hesitated. And then? Then we show Mr. Kozlov that some games have rules he's never learned to play. As Marcus dialed Alexander's number, he realized that the next 6 days would determine not just his fate, but the future of everyone he cared about. The deadly wager was about to begin, but this time the stakes went far beyond money or personal revenge. This time, it was about survival itself. The next morning brought an unexpected visitor to the Golden Dragon. Marcus was reviewing security footage in the surveillance room when Linda's voice crackled through the intercom. "Mr. Chen, there's a woman here to see you. She says it's about Viktor Kozlov and that you'll want to hear what she has to say." Marcus made his way to the main floor, where he found a striking woman in her early 30s waiting near the reception desk. She had short auburn hair, intelligent green eyes, and carried herself with the confident posture of someone accustomed to dangerous situations. "Marcus Chen?" she asked, extending her hand. "My name is Elena Vasquez. I used to work for Viktor Kozlov." Marcus studied her carefully. "Used to? I was his operations manager for 18 months. I know about the tournament, about Alexander Petrov, and about what Viktor really has planned for you." She glanced around the busy casino floor. "Is there somewhere private we can talk?" They moved to a small conference room away from the gaming areas. Elena placed a tablet on the table and opened a file filled with photographs, financial records, and what appeared to be architectural blueprints. "Viktor's tournament isn't what he's telling people," she began without preamble. "Yes, it's real, and yes, the winner takes 24 buy-ins worth of cryptocurrency. But that's not why he's organizing it." Marcus leaned forward. "What do you mean?" Elena touched the tablet screen, displaying a detailed layout of a luxury yacht. "The Tsarina is a floating fortress. Security systems, armed personnel, and most importantly, it's equipped with technology that can jam all satellite communications and GPS tracking once you're more than 50 miles offshore. He's planning to kill the players. Some of them, yes. But not all, and not immediately." Elena's expression darkened. "Viktor has been collecting information on every participant for months. Their businesses, their families, their secrets. The tournament is just the delivery system." She opened another file showing financial records. 12 of the 24 players represent legitimate businesses worth over $1 billion combined. "Viktor doesn't want their tournament buy-ins. He wants their companies." Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. Corporate takeovers through blackmail and intimidation. Exactly. He forces them to lose everything they own piece by piece, or he destroys their families. The tournament creates the perfect environment for psychological pressure. Isolated, afraid, surrounded by Viktor's people with no escape route. "Why are you telling me this?" Marcus asked. "What's your angle?" Elena's jaw tightened. "Because Viktor killed my brother. Diego was one of his dealers in Miami. When he discovered Viktor was running drugs through the casino's supply chain, he tried to quit. Viktor had him murdered and made it look like a gang shooting." She pulled up a photograph of a young man who shared her distinctive green eyes and determined expression. Diego was going to medical school. He only worked for Viktor to pay for his education. He never hurt anyone in his life. Marcus understood the pain he saw in her eyes. "So you want revenge? I want justice. But more than that, I want to stop Viktor before he expands his operation into every major city in America." Elena closed the tablet and met Marcus's gaze directly. "I have detailed intelligence on his security procedures, his personnel, and most importantly, his weaknesses." "What kind of weaknesses?" Elena smiled for the first time since entering the room. "Viktor's greatest strength is also his fatal flaw. He trusts absolutely no one except Alexander Petrov. Every major decision, every security protocol, every financial transaction goes through Alexander first. And Alexander has been skimming money from Viktor's operations for over 2 years. Not much. Just enough to build himself a retirement fund without attracting attention. But I have documented proof of every transaction." Marcus began to see the possibilities. If Viktor discovered Alexander's betrayal, it would destroy his entire organization. Viktor's reputation is built on loyalty and fear. If his most trusted lieutenant has been stealing from him, every other member of his crew would start wondering what they could get away with. They were interrupted by Chen Wei entering the conference room with a grave expression. "We have a problem," he announced, placing his own tablet on the table. "I just received a call from my contacts in San Francisco. Sarah is missing." Marcus shot to his feet. "What do you mean missing?" "She didn't show up for her shift at the hospital yesterday evening. Her roommate says she left that morning for class but never came home. The police won't file a missing person report for another 48 hours. Elena studied the timeline on Chen Wei's tablet. "This is wrong. Viktor wouldn't take her before the tournament. He needs her as leverage to ensure your participation." "Unless something changed," Marcus said grimly. He pulled out his phone and dialed Alexander's number. It went straight to voicemail. Elena grabbed his wrist before he could make another call. "Wait, let me try something." She opened a different app on her tablet and began typing rapidly. I still have access to some of Victor's communication systems. If they took Sarah, there will be digital traces. Minutes passed in tense silence as Elena worked. Finally, she looked up with a mixture of relief and concern. She's alive, but not with Victor's people. Someone else took her. Chen Wei frowned. Who else knows about the situation? Elena's expression grew troubled. There are other players in this game. Victor has enemies, people who would love to see him fail spectacularly. If one of them discovered the tournament plan, Marcus began pacing the small room. They could be using Sarah to force me to sabotage Victor's operation from the inside. Or they could be planning to eliminate Victor during the tournament and want to make sure you survive as a witness, Elena added. Chen Wei pulled up a map of the California coast on his tablet. The tournament is in 4 days. If we're going to act, we need to move now. Elena stood up and began gathering her materials. I have a proposal. Let me infiltrate the yacht before the tournament begins. I know Victor's security protocols, and more importantly, I know how to move through his organization without attracting attention. That's suicide, Marcus protested. If Victor discovers you're still alive, he won't. As far as Victor knows, Elena Vasquez died in a car accident in Mexico City 3 months ago. But Maria Santos, the new catering coordinator he hired last week, is just another face in the crowd. She opened her tablet one more time, showing them a new identity complete with background history and employment records. I've been preparing for this opportunity for months. The question is whether you're willing to trust me. Marcus looked at Chen Wei, who nodded slowly. What would you need from us? Access to the Golden Dragon's security system during the tournament. If I can establish a secure communication link from the yacht, I can feed you real-time intelligence and coordinate any rescue operations. And if Victor discovers what you're doing? Elena's smile was cold and determined. Then he'll learn that some debts can only be paid in blood. Chen Wei closed his laptop with finality. Very well. We accept your proposal, but understand this. Once we start down this path, there's no turning back. Victor won't stop hunting us until one side or the other is completely destroyed. Marcus thought about Sarah, about the photograph of her laughing innocently while Victor's people watched from the shadows. The tournament had become something far more complex and dangerous than a simple gambling competition. Then, we make sure we're the ones left standing, he said, quietly. Elena gathered her materials and headed for the door. I'll contact you tomorrow with the final coordination details. And Marcus, practice your poker face. You're going to need it. After she left, Marcus and Chen Wei sat in silence contemplating the magnitude of what they had just agreed to undertake. Are we doing the right thing? Marcus asked finally. Chen Wei considered the question carefully. Victor forced this confrontation when he threatened our family. Now we finish it on our terms. The deadly wager was becoming a war, and the stakes kept rising with each passing hour. The Tsarina was even more impressive in person than Elena's photographs had suggested. The 300-foot luxury yacht gleamed white against the dark Pacific waters, its multiple decks blazing with lights that turned the surrounding ocean into a field of dancing stars. As Marcus approached in the tender boat, he could see armed security personnel stationed at regular intervals along the railings. Quite a sight, isn't she? Alexander Petrov materialized beside him, impeccably dressed in a midnight blue dinner jacket. Victor spared no expense for tonight's entertainment. Marcus nodded, keeping his expression neutral despite the churning anxiety in his stomach. 3 days had passed since Elena's infiltration of Victor's organization, and he had heard nothing from her or about Sarah's whereabouts. The silence was more terrifying than any direct threat could have been. The tender docked at the yacht's lower platform, where Marcus was immediately subjected to a thorough security screening. Metal detectors, body scanners, and a physical pat-down by stone-faced guards who looked like they could break him in half without effort. Security seems tight, Marcus observed as they waited for the elevator to the main deck. 23 of the world's most dangerous gamblers aboard a floating fortress in international waters. Alexander replied with amusement. What could possibly go wrong? The elevator doors opened to reveal a stunning panorama of luxury and menace. The main deck had been converted into an elaborate gaming room, complete with professional dealers, premium alcohol stations, and comfortable seating areas where players could socialize between games. But Marcus noticed the subtle details that revealed the yacht's true purpose. Bulletproof glass at strategic locations, emergency lockdown systems, and communication equipment that could isolate the vessel from all outside contact. Viktor Kozlov stood at the center of it all like a spider in an elegant web. He had aged since Moscow, his hair now completely gray and his face bearing new lines of stress and violence. But his eyes remained as cold and calculating as Marcus remembered. "Marcus Chen," Viktor announced as he approached, his Russian accent thick with false warmth. "My old friend returns to settle his debts like a gentleman." "Viktor." Marcus accepted the offered handshake, noting the unusual strength in the older man's grip. "Impressive setup. Very different from your Moscow operation. Success requires adaptation. Speaking of which, I trust your buy-in is in order?" Marcus withdrew an encrypted digital wallet from his jacket. "5 million in Bitcoin as requested." Viktor gestured to a nearby technician who verified the transaction on a secure tablet. Within moments, the money had been transferred to the tournament's escrow account. "Excellent. Now let me introduce you to your fellow competitors." The next hour passed in a blur of introductions and careful observation. Marcus recognized several faces from international gambling circuits, but others were clearly legitimate business people who had somehow been drawn into Viktor's web. A tech executive from Silicon Valley, a oil company CEO from Texas, a pharmaceutical heiress from Switzerland. Each carried themselves with the rigid posture of people under extreme pressure. "Nervous?" asked a woman with a slight German accent. She appeared to be in her 40s with sharp features and eyes that missed nothing. "Should I be?" Marcus replied. "Dr. Ingrid Hoffman," she introduced herself. "Pharmaceutical research. And yes, you should be very nervous. This isn't just a tournament. It's a feeding frenzy." Before Marcus could respond, Viktor called for attention from the center of the room. "Ladies and gentlemen, welcome aboard the Serena. Tonight, you will participate in the most exclusive gambling tournament in the world. The rules are simple: survival of the fittest. The games will test not just your gambling skills, but your ability to function under pressure." He paused as waiters distributed glasses of champagne to each player. The tournament consists of 6 rounds, each designed to eliminate 4 players. We begin with 24 competitors and end with one ultimate victor who will claim the entire prize pool of $120 million. Murmurs of excitement and fear rippled through the crowd. Marcus quickly calculated that the prize pool was worth far more than the buy-ins alone. Viktor had added his own money to increase the stakes. "However," Viktor continued, his voice dropping to a more ominous tone, "each player must also provide additional collateral beyond their buy-in, something of personal value that will be forfeit if they lose." Alexander Petrov stepped forward with a silver briefcase. Inside this case are 24 sealed envelopes. Each contains detailed information about one of your fellow competitors. Their businesses, their families, their most carefully guarded secrets. When you are eliminated from the tournament, your envelope will be opened and its contents shared with the remaining players. The room fell completely silent. Marcus felt his blood turn to ice as he understood the true nature of Viktor's game. This wasn't just about gambling. It was about systematic destruction through mutual assured blackmail. "Of course," Viktor added with a cold smile, "the winner will receive not only the monetary prize but also all 23 envelopes. Complete power over the lives and fortunes of everyone who dares to challenge them." Dr. Hoffman moved closer to Marcus. "Now I see why you should be nervous," she whispered. The first round began immediately with a complex variation of poker that Marcus had never encountered before. The rules seemed designed to maximize psychological pressure, rather than test pure gambling skill. Players were required to make increasingly personal wagers, childhood memories, family photographs, business secrets that could destroy their competitors' livelihoods. As the evening progressed, Marcus began to notice subtle patterns in the other players' behavior. Some were clearly terrified, making desperate bets in hopes of ending their ordeal quickly. Others appeared almost relieved, as if they had already accepted their fate and were simply going through the motions. But a few, like Dr. Hoffman, seemed to be playing a different game entirely. They watched Viktor's security team with calculating eyes, tested the limits of the yacht's communication systems, and formed quiet alliances during break periods. During the second round, Marcus caught a glimpse of familiar auburn hair among the catering staff. Elena had successfully infiltrated the yacht's crew, but she looked tense and kept glancing at her watch as if worried about timing. The rounds continued through the night, each one more psychologically brutal than the last. By dawn, 12 players had been eliminated, their sealed envelopes opened and their secrets revealed to the remaining competitors. The atmosphere on the yacht had transformed from nervous excitement to barely contained desperation. Marcus had survived through a combination of skill, luck, and careful observation of Victor's tells during the dealing process. But he knew the real test was yet to come. The final rounds would pit the surviving players against each other in games where the stakes went far beyond money or reputation. As the sun rose over the Pacific, Victor announced a 6-hour break for rest and refreshment. But Marcus noticed that several of the yacht's crew members were making subtle preparations for something that had nothing to do with gambling. Elena appeared at his side during the breakfast service, disguised as a waitress serving coffee. "We need to talk," she whispered urgently. "The tournament is just the opening act. Victor's real plan begins tonight, and it's worse than anything we imagined." She slipped him a small communication device disguised as a sugar packet. "Your sister is alive, but she's not the only hostage. Victor has been collecting leverage on every player for months." Marcus pocketed the device as Alexander Petrov approached their table. "Mr. Chen, I hope you're enjoying the accommodations. Victor is particularly looking forward to the final rounds this evening." "I'm sure he is," Marcus replied calmly. As Alexander moved away, Marcus realized that the deadly wager had become something far more complex than he had anticipated. Victor wasn't just seeking revenge against him. He was using the tournament as cover for a massive criminal operation that could destroy dozens of innocent people. The real game was about to begin, and the stakes were higher than anyone could have imagined. Marcus waited until the afternoon lull to activate Elena's communication device. Hidden in his stateroom's bathroom with the shower running to mask any sound, he whispered into the tiny microphone. "This is Marcus. What did you discover?" Elena's voice came through clearly despite the device's small size. "Victor isn't planning to let anyone leave this yacht alive. The tournament is cover for the largest corporate extortion scheme ever attempted." Marcus felt his blood chill. "Explain." "I accessed Victor's private computer system. Every player here represents a different sector of the American economy: technology, energy, pharmaceuticals, defense contracting, financial services. Victor has been studying their businesses for over a year, identifying vulnerabilities and pressure points." She paused, and Marcus could hear muffled voices in the background. "The sealed envelopes don't just contain secrets. They contain detailed plans for hostile takeovers, industrial sabotage, and systematic destruction of each company. Victor intends to force the survivors to implement these plans against their own competitors." Marcus processed this information with growing horror. He's creating a network of corporate puppets under his control. Worse than that, I found shipping manifests and personnel records. Victor has been moving weapons, drugs, and human trafficking operations through the legitimate businesses of previous tournament participants. This yacht isn't just a gambling venue. It's the command center for an international criminal empire. The shower water continued running, but Marcus felt ice-cold sweat beading on his forehead. "What about Sarah? Did you find any information about my sister?" "She's being held in a warehouse in Long Beach along with 17 other family members of tournament participants." "But Marcus, that's not the worst part." Elena's voice dropped to an urgent whisper. "Victor knows I'm here. Alexander Petrov has been testing the staff all day, asking questions that only someone with inside knowledge could answer properly. I think I have maybe 2 hours before they identify me." Marcus closed his eyes, thinking rapidly through their limited options. "Can you get a message to Chen Wei?" "Already done. Your cousin received the intelligence package an hour ago. But even if he contacts the authorities, we're in international waters. No one can reach us legally until we return to port." "When is that supposed to happen?" Elena's laugh was bitter. "According to the official schedule, never. The yacht has enough supplies for 3 months at sea. Victor plans to keep the survivors aboard indefinitely, using them as remote-controlled agents to destroy their competitors and expand his empire." A sharp knock on Marcus's stateroom door interrupted their conversation. "Mr. Chen? The final rounds are beginning in 20 minutes. Marcus quickly shut off the water and called back, "I'll be right there." He whispered into the communication device one last time. "Elena, whatever happens next, get yourself to safety. Don't try to be a hero, too late for that. Just remember, Victor's greatest weakness is his paranoia. He trusts no one completely, not even Alexander. If you can create doubt between them." Her transmission cut off abruptly. leaving Marcus alone with the terrifying knowledge of Victor's true plans. Marcus dressed quickly and made his way to the main gaming deck, where the remaining 12 players had gathered for the final rounds. The atmosphere was markedly different from the previous evening's nervous excitement. Fear hung in the air like smoke, and several players showed obvious signs of sleep deprivation and stress. Victor stood at the center of the room beside a single poker table, its green felt surface gleaming under the harsh spotlights. Gone was the previous night's pretense of luxury and entertainment. This was clearly an interrogation chamber disguised as a casino. "Welcome to the final phase," Victor announced, his voice carrying across the silent deck. 6 players will advance to the ultimate round. 6 will not see another sunrise. Dr. Hoffman caught Marcus's eye from across the room. Her earlier composure had cracked, revealing the terror beneath. She mouthed something that looked like "help us" before turning away. Alexander Petrov gestured for the players to take their positions around the table. As Marcus moved toward his assigned seat, he noticed several crew members positioning themselves at strategic points around the deck. Each carried what appeared to be service equipment, but Marcus recognized the subtle bulges of concealed weapons. "The final game is simple," Victor continued. 6-handed Texas Hold'em, but with special rules. Each time you lose a significant hand, you will answer a personal question honestly, or forfeit your life immediately. He gestured to a nearby monitor displaying a live video feed. Marcus's heart stopped as he recognized his sister Sarah, bound to a chair in what appeared to be a warehouse. She looked unharmed but terrified. "As you can see, we have methods of verifying the truthfulness of your answers," Victor added with a cold smile. The other monitor screens around the room flickered to life, each showing a different hostage: spouses, children, elderly parents, business partners. Victor had assembled a comprehensive collection of human leverage. "Now," Victor said, settling into an observer's chair, "let the final reckoning begin." The first few hands proceeded normally, with players making conservative bets and careful observations, but Marcus could see the psychological pressure building with each passing minute. Every decision carried the weight of life and death, not just for themselves but for their loved ones. During the 4th hand, the tech executive from Silicon Valley lost a substantial pot to Dr. Hoffman. Victor immediately stepped forward. "Mr. Rodriguez, your first question. What is the access code for your company's quantum encryption research?" Rodriguez's hands shook as he stared at the monitor showing his wife and 2 young children. "I can't. That information is classified. It would compromise national security." Victor nodded to Alexander, who spoke quietly into a radio. On the monitor, one of the warehouse guards approached Rodriguez's family with a weapon drawn. "The code, Mr. Rodriguez, 77 Alpha 99 Delta 6, Rodriguez whispered, tears streaming down his face. Marcus watched in horror as Victor's technician immediately began typing the information into a secure terminal. Within minutes, they would have access to cutting-edge encryption technology worth billions of dollars and critical to American defense systems. The game continued with increasingly brutal psychological torture. Each lost hand forced another player to reveal industrial secrets, financial vulnerabilities, or personal information that could be used for blackmail and extortion. Victor was systematically dismantling the American economy, one forced confession at a time. But Marcus noticed something that Victor had missed in his focus on the interrogations. Elena, still disguised as a crew member, was moving systematically through the yacht's security stations. Her subtle hand signals indicated she was disabling communication systems and preparing for something significant. During a break between hands, Marcus excused himself for the restroom and activated the communication device. "Elena, what's your status? I've located the yacht's emergency systems and the hostage monitoring equipment. But Marcus, I found something else. Alexander has been recording everything for his own purposes. He's planning to betray Victor and take control of the operation himself." This information hit Marcus like a physical blow.
"How do you know?"
"I found his private files. Alexander has been building his own criminal network using Victor's resources. He's been skimming not just money, but information, contacts, and operational assets. Tonight was supposed to be Victor's triumph, but Alexander plans to eliminate him and claim everything for himself." Marcus quickly processed this revelation. Victor's paranoia might actually work in their favor if properly exploited. "Can you get proof of Alexander's betrayal to Victor?" Already working on it, but I need a distraction. Something big enough to focus everyone's attention while I access the main computer system. Marcus returned to the poker table with a desperate plan forming in his mind. He would have to risk everything on a single hand. But if Elena could expose Alexander's treachery at the right moment, they might be able to turn Victor's paranoia against his own organization. The cards were dealt for what would become the most important hand of Marcus's life. But this time he wasn't just gambling with money or even his own survival. He was betting on human nature's most predictable weakness, the inability to truly trust anyone in a world built on betrayal and fear. As he looked at his cards, Marcus realized that the deadly wager had become something far more complex than Victor had intended. 3 different games were being played simultaneously on the Tsarina, and only one could end in victory. The question was, which player understood the real rules? Marcus stared at his cards, pocket kings, a strong hand but not unbeatable. Around the table, the 5 remaining players showed varying degrees of desperation and calculation. Dr. Hoffman had survived through careful play and strategic alliances, while the pharmaceutical heiress had relied on ruthless aggression. The oil executive appeared to be on the verge of complete breakdown, and the defense contractor kept glancing nervously at the monitors showing his elderly father. Victor watched from his elevated position like a Roman emperor presiding over gladiatorial combat. But Marcus noticed that Alexander Petrov had positioned himself near the main computer terminal, his fingers moving subtly across a hidden keyboard. The betting began conservatively, but Marcus knew he needed to create the distraction Elena required. When the action reached him, he pushed his entire remaining chip stack forward. "All in," he announced calmly. The table erupted in surprised murmurs. Victor leaned forward with interest while Alexander's head snapped up from his concealed activities. "Bold move, Mr. Chen," Victor observed. "But premature, perhaps?" Marcus met his gaze steadily. "Sometimes the biggest risk is playing it safe." Dr. Hoffman studied her cards for a long moment before folding. The pharmaceutical heiress called immediately, revealing her desperation to end the psychological torture. The other players folded quickly, leaving Marcus and the heiress in a heads-up confrontation worth over $40 million in accumulated chips. The flop revealed King of Hearts, 7 of clubs, and 2 of diamonds. Marcus had flopped a set of kings, giving him an overwhelming advantage. But his real focus was on Elena, who had used the commotion to reach the main security console. Victor stepped closer to the table as the turn card was revealed. Ace of Spades. The heiress's eyes widened slightly, suggesting she had caught a piece of the board. "Before we see the river card," Victor announced, "I believe we should have some entertainment. Alexander, please show our guests the special footage you've been collecting." Alexander hesitated for just a moment too long. "Sir, perhaps we should finish the hand first." Victor's expression darkened with suspicion. "I gave you an instruction, Alexander. Follow it immediately." Marcus watched as Elena's fingers flew across the security console's keyboard. Whatever she was accessing, it required her complete attention and left her exposed if anyone looked in her direction. Alexander reluctantly activated the main display screens, which filled with surveillance footage from various locations around the yacht. But instead of the entertainment Victor had expected, the screens showed Alexander's private meetings with several crew members, financial transactions to personal accounts, and most damning of all, communications with rival crime organizations. Victor's face went completely white with rage. "What is this?" "Sir, I can explain," Alexander began, but Victor cut him off with a sharp gesture. 20 years of loyalty, and you betray me for money?" Victor's voice carried the cold fury of a man whose entire worldview had just collapsed. Alexander's hand moved toward the concealed weapon in his jacket, but Victor was faster. The older Russian produced a pistol from seemingly nowhere and pointed it directly at his former lieutenant's chest. "You recording everything? Stealing my money, planning to take my empire?" Victor continued, his accent thickening with emotion. "Did you think I would never discover your treachery?" The poker game was forgotten as everyone's attention focused on the confrontation between the 2 Russians. Elena used the distraction to complete her infiltration of the yacht's systems, her fingers moving rapidly across multiple interfaces. "Victor, listen to me," Alexander said, raising his hands slowly. "Those files are fake. Someone planted them to turn us against each other. Someone who would have access to plant such elaborate deceptions. Victor's gun never wavered. Only someone with complete access to my systems. Only someone I trusted absolutely. Marcus realized this was his moment. While Victor's paranoia consumed his attention, Elena had successfully accessed the yacht's emergency systems. Red lights began flashing throughout the gaming deck as automated systems activated. Security breach detected, announced the yacht's computer system, initiating emergency protocols. Victor spun around, confused by the sudden activation of systems he didn't understand. What is happening? Alexander, explain this immediately. But Alexander had used Victor's momentary distraction to draw his own weapon. You always were too paranoid for your own good, old man. It's time for new leadership. The gunshot echoed across the deck like thunder. Victor stumbled backward, clutching his shoulder as blood seeped through his expensive suit. The remaining poker players scattered, seeking cover behind furniture and equipment. Elena's voice came through the yacht's communication system, clear and commanding. Attention all personnel. This vessel is now under federal jurisdiction. Coast Guard vessels are approaching from 3 directions. Surrender your weapons immediately. Marcus looked toward the horizon and saw the welcome sight of official boats racing toward the Tsarina, their emergency lights cutting through the pre-dawn darkness. Chen Wei had somehow managed to coordinate a multi-agency response despite the yacht's location in international waters. Alexander fired 2 more shots at Victor before turning his weapon toward the remaining players. No one leaves this yacht alive. Too many witnesses, too many complications. But the crew members Alexander had counted on for support were already laying down their weapons and raising their hands. Elena's infiltration had revealed the hopelessness of their situation, and none of them wanted to face federal charges for murder. Dr. Hoffman emerged from behind an overturned table, revealing that she had been recording everything on a hidden device. Agent Hoffman, FBI, she announced. Mr. Petrov, you're under arrest for racketeering, kidnapping, and conspiracy to commit murder. Alexander's expression shifted from anger to desperate calculation. He still held his weapon, but he was now facing federal agents, an armed Coast Guard boarding party, and the complete collapse of his criminal organization. You think this ends anything? He snarled. Victor's empire spans 3 continents. Killing him just makes me the new king. Actually, Elena said, appearing from behind the security console with Victor's laptop in her hands, it makes you a target for everyone who used to fear him. She displayed the screen showing Victor's complete organizational chart, financial records, and operational details. Funny thing about criminal empires built on fear and betrayal. When the king falls, everyone scrambles to save themselves. Your former allies are probably already negotiating deals with law enforcement. The sound of boots on the deck announced the arrival of the Coast Guard boarding party. Alexander looked around desperately, realizing that his coup had become a complete disaster. Victor, still conscious despite his wound, managed a bitter laugh. You always were too ambitious, Alexander. That's why you'll never succeed at this business. Within minutes, the yacht was secured and the remaining players were being evacuated to safety. Marcus watched as Alexander and the surviving crew members were led away in restraints, their criminal empire collapsing as quickly as it had been built. Elena appeared at his side, no longer disguised as a crew member. Your sister is safe. Chen Wei's people reached the warehouse 30 minutes ago. Marcus felt a weight lift from his shoulders that he hadn't realized he'd been carrying. How did you coordinate all this? Dr. Hoffman has been running a federal investigation into Victor's operations for over a year. When I contacted Chen Wei with the intelligence we gathered, he was able to connect us with her task force. They stood together at the yacht's railing, watching the Coast Guard vessels escort the Tsarina back toward American territorial waters. The deadly wager was finally over, but Marcus knew the legal proceedings would continue for months. Victor's criminal empire had been built on the simple principle that everyone had something they valued more than their own life. But he had forgotten that the same principle could be turned against him when his own paranoia and greed created vulnerabilities within his organization. As the sun rose over the Pacific, Marcus realized that sometimes the most dangerous gamble was trusting the wrong people with your life. Victor and Alexander had both made that mistake, and their mutual betrayal had brought down an empire that had seemed untouchable. The tournament chips were worthless now, scattered across the deck like colorful confetti, but the real prize had been something far more valuable: the freedom to live without fear, and the knowledge that even the most powerful criminals could be brought to justice when their victims refused to remain silent. Marcus. Chen had entered Victor's deadly wager as a desperate man trying to protect his family. He was leaving it as someone who had helped dismantle one of the most dangerous criminal organizations in the world. The game was over, and for the first time in years, Marcus had truly won.